everybody, it's Russell.
And I'm Ryan. And today we're talking about the member of the wedding for the Spilling Tea Book Club.
Carson McCullers, the member of the wedding, Ryan. What's funny is you and I have not talked about this book at all yet.
We haven't. I finished it yesterday.
I finished it a couple of days ago myself.
This is a really small book. It's just it's like 160 pages, I think. It's tiny. One of the reasons why we may have chosen it. But also because we felt like everybody had read The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Like, that's out there, but this is lesser known. And it's been made to a play written by Carson McCullers, and I think there's a movie made out of it.
Yeah.
So it's quite popular, and you just don't hear about it much anymore.
Yeah, so it'll be super exciting to see what you think, because for such a slim book, there was a lot going on.
Yes.
So if you are new to the Spilling Tea Book Club, basically what will happen is one of us, that's going to be me, will give a brief introduction to the life of Carson McCullers, and then Ryan will sum up the plot. We will do our best not to spoil anything that happens in the book, but we do our best. We can't always keep that promise, but then we'll go ahead and we'll just have a conversation, which should be interesting because we don't even know where it will go ourselves. So that is fun. So Carson McCullers actually had a very interesting life. So she was born in 1917 in Columbus, Georgia, and she grew up there, and she actually left there with the intention, I think she took a ship to New York City. She was going to go to Juilliard for music. That was her dream and goal. But on her way to Juilliard, she lost the money on the subway and decided not to go to Juilliard. And she just decided to get a job instead and write. So, I mean, I wish that I had that much moxie in my life. I think that is quite astounding. But she was a pretty great musician. She wound up returning to New York and doing menial jobs to try to start her writing career. And she did take classes at Columbia and stuff to learn how to write. And then she had some health issues. She was sort of plagued by health issues and alcoholism her whole entire life. So she returned home to sort of recuperate in about 1937. She was 20 years old, and she wound up marrying Reeves McCullers, who was also an inspiring writer, but also an ex-soldier. And they got married, and they were going to live together, and they were going to rotate back and forth. One would make a living while the other wrote, and then they would switch. Unfortunately for Reeves, his wife's career was a little bit, let's just say she did a little better than he did. So eventually she was a full-time writer, and he was the one who had to work full-time. They wound up actually getting a divorce because of everything that goes on, and they had a really wild life together. And they divorced in 1941. And after that, so Carson goes back to New York. She always sort of had this love affair with New York. And she became a part of the February House, which was like this artists enclave. Gypsy Rose Lee was a member. W.H. Auden was a member. Paul and Jane Bowles were members. And then she moved to Paris, where she lived after World War II for quite a while, where she met Truman Capote, where she met Tennessee Williams. So just think about the life of this woman. She wound up getting into another relationship and moving back to New York. And that relationship didn't work out because she was often very attracted to women and wanted relationships with these women to work, but they were never reciprocated. So she struggled a lot with that. Eventually, that drove her in 1945 to going back and marrying Reeves McCullers again. And they got married again. And they were both had mental health issues. They suffered from depression. And in 1953, Reeves actually asked Carson to come and commit suicide with him, do a suicide pact. And she decided not to, and he wound up dying of suicide. And she wound up turning that into literary, I don't want to say inspiration, but literary fodder to deal with her grief. And then she eventually just got so ill and suffered from so much alcoholism, she actually died at 50. And I just keep thinking all of this happened to this woman and she died at 50.
Wow.
You know, she actually had suffered a number of strokes when she was younger, and it was just eventually her body was worn out. And at 50, she died of a brain hemorrhage and passed away, giving us many, many classic works of literature. As Ryan said, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter is her favorite, her most famous novel. I think everyone reads that in high school. I think it's one of those books. But she was well known for many short stories and other novels. And The Member of the Wedding was very popular and actually was sort of the apex of her career for many, many years. So that's Carson McCullers in a nutshell. Ryan, all these women that we read, their lives are fascinating.
Their lives are really fascinating. I did know some of that because we read my autobiography of Carson McCullers, which is like this interesting memoir about researching Carson McCullers' life and trying to find out if she was actually like queer or like what was going on. And so I got some of that background, but what a fascinating life.
Yes. And so we should probably say the My Autobiography of Carson McCullers is by Jen Shapland, and it's very good.
Very good.
I love it. Very good. So Ryan, sum up the plot of this little book for us.
Oh, okay. So The Member of the Wedding is about three characters, essentially. Frances Jasmine, who goes by the name Frankie. Bernice, who's a Black nanny housekeeper. And Frankie is a 12-year-old white girl. And then her 6-year-old cousin, John Henry. It is hard to summarize the plot of this book because it doesn't have a really strong plot.
Yes.
It's mostly the three of them sitting at a table talking.
Well, utterly obsessed.
This takes place over, I would say, 3 days. 2 days before a wedding in another town. I forget if it was her sister.
Her brother was
her brother.
Married.
Okay.
He was home from war, right?
Right.
Or the military or something like that.
Because this is during World War II. This novel was published in 1946. So the novel takes place during World War II. And he's home from the war, and then he is getting married in a nearby town. And so all of this activity is building up to this wedding. And the titular member of the wedding, I believe, refers to Frankie.
Yes.
There's some other moments in it where she goes out and explores the town. She has an encounter with another soldier, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then it ends. And it's one of the most interesting endings. It wraps everything up.
That it does.
So yes, the member of the wedding, 3 people sitting around a table talking. I could totally see this as a play.
Absolutely.
Like, when I read that it was a play, I'm like, oh, this totally makes sense. But then I was like, are they gonna really have a 6-year-old like in a play like doing this? And they did. They had like a second grader. Yeah. And I forget who played the Frankie in the play. I think she's famous.
Frankie's really obsession, right, is that she feels like she's going to go to this wedding And I don't think it's anything of a spoiler to say she does not want to return home. She thinks that she is going to go to this wedding and she's going to leave with her brother and his new wife, never to return home because she is over her small, teeny, tiny town.
Right.
Which, Ryan, I don't know, I had a hard time understanding the size of this community because part of it was like described that it was so small, but then it would be like, there are a lot of people she didn't know and there would be strangers. And I was like, well, if it's a small Southern town, I would expect that she would know everybody, but it was big enough for there to be parts of town that were bad or seedy and people that she didn't know. And so Frankie is fascinating because she thinks she knows so much more than she really does.
Yes. It was interesting getting life through her eyes. There are a lot of things that happen and you're like, you didn't expect that to happen, or you don't understand what's going on. One of my favorite parts of the book was when she's like talking about how she walked in on somebody in bed and they were having a fit. And I was like, they were doing it. And she just didn't get it. Like even when she was 12. So it was just really interesting. She grew up in the house with just her father. Her mother died when she was born, like giving birth to Frankie. Yeah. So her father was kind of, I would say, distant, not real engaged. He makes a small appearance in this book, but you really don't see much of him. I think that's probably reflective of their relationship.
Well, and it seems like Bernice, right, has sort of been her caretaker her whole entire life. Mm-hmm. And is sort of this motherly figure that Frankie doesn't always take seriously, but is sort of like this voice of wisdom in a lot of ways. But going back to what you said about all those situations, I thought that was one of the brilliant aspects of the novel. As an adult reader, you knew exactly where some of this was headed. And there was real tension. You mentioned this incident or this thing that goes on with this soldier she meets in this restaurant, or I mean, it was like, I guess maybe a bar. I'm not exactly sure what the locale was.
It could have been a brothel. Like it could have been weird.
But there were so many like warning signs, danger, danger, and she's just walking along. She just oblivious. But that I thought was really fascinating. Carson McCullers sets this tone. You as the adult reader are like scared to death for this young girl, and she just going through because she knows better. And I thought that was fascinating because it is really that point of view that gets her to sort of not really understand what's going wrong with the wedding, not understanding what's going on with John Henry, not understanding what's going on sort of in her whole entire world. It's because she's oblivious, but you as the reader see it all coming and you feel for her in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do. And she's pretty sympathetic. And kind of funny because she kept trying to be like more grown up and like imitating adults and like trying to tell jokes and stuff in like a really awkward way. I don't know. She was endearing to me. I really rooted for her.
I did too. I felt bad for her because I really did get a sense that she just wanted something different in life and she didn't know exactly how to articulate it. One of the interesting thing is, so in the first section of the book, there's 3 sections. Her name changes in each section. In the first part, she's Frankie, which is sort of that young nickname that she's always wanted. That she doesn't want to be called. And then in the second section where she is making all these plans, she's F. Jasmine, which is a much more sophisticated and a lot more adult things happen to her in that section. And then in the final section, when sort of everything comes to and she's sort of hit in the face with reality, she's just called Frances, right?
Yes.
Frances. So as her name changes, her perspective from child to she thinks sophisticated adult to real world teenager happens in these 3 sections, and her name changes with it, which I thought was a really interesting literary device.
Yeah, it was. I thought that just showed like the amount of control that Carson McCullers had over it, and like her thoughts around it. It was really smart. I liked it. We get a bit about Bernice's life, who was also really interesting. Yeah. She had been married several times, and there was like a number of them that did not go well. I forget which one it was, but like she essentially married a guy because he had a messed up thumb that reminded her of some other guy that she was in love with.
Her first husband, she was like, I think, the most in love with, right?
Was that
and
Louis?
He had this messed up thumb, which the second guy had.
Yeah.
So random.
But so there's some of that, and it was kind of fun to hear her life. I kind of wish we would have gotten a little more of that. But it was pretty I feel like this probably was kind of racy at the time. It's about like a 12-year-old white girl who's like talking with her black housekeeper, who's probably in her 40s. She's definitely older, and like she's talking to her about some pretty adult issues. Like at one point she talks to her about 2 men getting together and stuff. And so there were a lot of adult themes in this book.
Absolutely. You know, I was reminded when we're talking about Bernice, there was a quote I read when I was prepping for this video. Richard Wright of Black Boy fame reviewed Carson McCullers' first book that came out when she was 22, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And he said about it, to me, the most impressive aspect of The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, is the astonishing humanity that enables a white writer for the first time in Southern fiction to handle Negro characters with as much ease and justice as those of her own race. And I thought Bernice fits that too. Like, I feel like Carson McCullers gave Bernice her own distinct voice, and she is free to do and make choices, and she's made some bad ones. And, you know, she's not sort of tied to this white family. It's almost as if she chooses to be there. And I thought that was really interesting, reading that comment about The Heart is the Lonely Hunter and sort of recognizing that same sort of humanity and heart in Bernice, because she does care for Frankie. You know?
Yeah, and she's definitely not a caricature. She's not a flat character. She's really well-rounded and you know, an integral part of the book, even though it's such a small book, we get to know a lot about her. And through their conversations, it really tells you a lot about what she's thinking, what Frankie's thinking. Yeah, I thought she was a great character. The character of John Henry was not needed. Like he was kind of tagging along with her. He wasn't as well like developed, but he was also sick. So what kind of personality could he have?
Well, but I mean, you don't want to spoil anything. But let's just say the fact that no one paid attention to John Henry is exactly why what happened to John Henry happened, right?
Yeah.
No one took him seriously. And I was just like, every time he would say something, I'd go, John Henry, what's wrong? Like, I wanted to know what was wrong, because he was exuding this need for people to pay attention to him. And I think that's how he sort of is the juxtaposition. Frankie stole all of the energy in the room, and John Henry, even with his precocious 6-year-oldness, couldn't steal any energy for any attention for people to realize anything like substantiated about him. Didn't his father die? No.
I don't remember. No.
I know that an uncle passed away and it caused his mom to have to go away. it was just like all this stuff was happening to this kid and no one really was paying attention to him at all.
Yeah. And both of them were out wandering the streets of this town city for like at night, like by themselves.
All hours of the night.
At one point, Frankie goes to visit Bernice's mom, who's a fortune teller, and just has John Henry wait outside for like, I don't know how long. I'm like, what? That's so weird.
I know. That was a great scene in the book, though.
Yeah,
as that happens, because Frankie put a lot of stock in that. She did not know, there were times when Frankie's 12-year-oldness just like came through. Like, there was no doubt that she was a child making decisions she was not ready to make.
Completely.
But overall, I mean, the book ends in such a weird way. Like,
it's really weird and really abrupt.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know what Carson McCullers wanted us to take away.
Yeah, I don't know either. Some people have like talked about this being kind of like the coming of age story for a young girl, but it wasn't really that. I mean, you could see kind of like the Catcher in the Rye aspect of it. Like a kid out on his or her own, like dealing with adult issues, but it didn't really go deep in that. And I think there wasn't like a big change at the end where you would get that normally, where like there's a clear point where they grow up.
Yeah.
Maybe if the ending wasn't so abrupt. I think the novelist Allie Smith said that like looking at this as a coming of age story, you miss what she calls its political heft.
Oh.
And she says that this is a very funny, very dark novel.
It absolutely. Frankie sort of reminded me of Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, I feel like she was, I don't know if, I assume people read this in 1946. It was quite popular. So it's hard not to imagine that some of these other writers took these stories or took the inspiration of this young girl and like made their own stories. So like Scout and To Kill a Mockingbird deals with race. Like I said, to like Catcher in the Rye, I felt like had a similar kind of concept in a way.
Yeah. But in the end, I realized that Carson McCullers is a really good writer.
Yeah, she's good. I don't know if she, like, I felt like this needed more polish though.
I agree. Go ahead.
Oh, there were scenes when I was like completely engrossed. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so good. Like I was in the novel. And then other parts I just didn't care for as much.
Yeah, I felt like this one was a little bit more disjointed, which it's funny to say that an author sort of peaked with their debut, but her life was so much more complicated by the time she wrote this one. So, but I definitely see why people read her. And she plays like she's a staunch pillar in sort of the canon of American literature to me. And I would recommend that people try this one, or it's a easy book to get into and really see her style and her strengths.
Yeah, I agree. It's good because it's a short book, and it really is an interesting time capsule for that period in America with characters and themes that we don't often get from that time.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, I recommend it. If you want to listen to the audiobook, I believe there's one on Audible narrated by Susan Sarandon.
Which is what I listened to as I read it.
Okay.
So it's pretty good, I will say. Susan Sarandon sometimes, to me, can sound a little monotonous. She did a nice job of sort of mixing it up for this book. So Ryan, it comes to that time where we have to give out some teacups. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Ryan, how many teacups do you give the Member of the Wedding by Carson McCullers?
I'm going to give it 3 teacups and a saucer. Like, I liked it. I didn't love it. The ending was weird for me, and there were parts where I like drifted off, but I thought it was good, and I'm really glad I read it.
I too am going to give it 3 teacups and a saucer. I thought it was an enjoyable read. I enjoyed it, but I walked away with it thinking I had read her better book already. And I thought that at the end I was kind of like, wow, what do we need here? So so that is the Member of the Wedding by Carson McCullers.
Yeah. That was the September selection for the Spilling Book Club.
Spilling Tea Book Club. Are we ready? What are we reading in October, Ryan?
In October, we're going to read How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents by Julia Alvarez.
I absolutely love that cover of the edition that you have. I have to rebuy mine because mine came in the mail. I bought it used, trying to be good, and it came in destroyed. So I have to go find another copy of it. But yeah, no, I'm really excited for that book too.
This is a book, I think it was published in 1991 or around that. And it's kind of a collection of, I want to say a collection of short stories. I think they're kind of interconnected stories around these different characters, and it takes place in New York. And so I think it sounds great. So I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, and everyone I know that has ever read it has raved about it. So I'm super excited to see what it brings to the table. So
yeah, so if you want to join us for that, I believe our next Zoom call is going to be October 2nd, where we're going to talk about how the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents. And then our Spilling Tea Book Club is going to meet on September 11th for the Member of the Wedding.
That you just said we're planning something in October sort of makes me sick to my stomach. I can't believe how fast 2021 is gone by, but Spilling Tea Book Club going strong. I'm so happy we do this every time we talk.
Yeah, we only have 3 more books for this year.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. So, well, everyone, as always, I so appreciate you coming to watch these videos. Ryan and I love doing the Spilling Tea Book Club, and we are working on other adventures together. So this has really spawned some fun and exciting stuff. So until next time, I'm just going to say goodbye from me.
Bye.